Welcome everybody to Coffee Hour. We have a special guest here due to the wonderful group here, but specifically Dan Acacia. So let's put a warm Coffee Hour welcome together for James Dixon. He is an independent journalist, and he's out there being bold in front of the Democrats and just trying to bring truth to all the conservatives. So he's doing a great job. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Sheila. Thank you so much, everybody. You know, before I came here, I had to, I decided to shave my beard. It was just getting a little bit unmanageable. And now I'm kind of regretting I did, because I look so much like James Hart that people might confuse us for one another. But you can still see the gray in mine, and he's fresh-faced. So we are different individuals. But I want to thank you all for showing up today. I mean, it's the fact that you guys would take time out of your day to be here at noon is kind of incredible. It's a minor miracle, and it just speaks to the strength of the group. And I think you all understand the opportunity we have in 26, right? Like, when I was a daily news reporter, let's say, I would always ask people at events I'm at, like, what would you be doing if you weren't here, right? And because that's always kind of revealing, like, the sacrifice someone made to be at any particular place at any particular time. And so I think you guys are here for the same reason I am, because we see that Michigan is really on the brink right now. We're in a position where Michigan could go one of two ways. Either we return to sanity, and it remains a place where by the time James is my age, people like him would still want to be here, or me and a lot of you are going to have to be looking for land in Kentucky or Tennessee or someplace else, because were Michigan Democrats to run our state for 16 years, there wouldn't be a year 17. And so I just like to talk about the two different histories that are at play right now. If you watch the national news, which I think is something that always should be avoided, because there's really no such thing, right? I believe news is local, and I believe politics are local. But if you watch the national news, they'll tell you that 26 is a midterm election. And I hate that word. I hate that word, because when you say it's a midterm election, what it's conditioning your average Republican to do is to stay home. See, you guys, if you're here on a Tuesday at noon, you're hardcore. You guys are voting. But how many of your friends don't vote unless Sean Hannity mentions that there's an election? And so I think, I call it continue watching conservatism. You could call it Fox News conservatism, where so many in our movement, you could sit there and watch Fox News all day on election day and never be told to go vote. And so there's a big difference between watching politics and consuming it as entertainment and the heart of politics, which is politics is for power. It's for gaining and amassing power and then using that power to make your people's lives better and your opposition's lives worse. And as terrible a president as Joe Biden was, he understood that. As good of a president as Donald Trump is, he understands that. And so we can't think that politics exists for any other reason than to make our lives better, than to make the world look like we want it to look. And so the first thing I would say is that going into this election cycle, I would have you know this. In 2027, Michigan is going to reflect someone's values. Someone's going to win. Someone's going to have all that power. Why not us? Right? So national history says if this is a midterm election, then you can expect the president's party to do poorly, which in this case is Republicans, which in this case would be bad news for all of us. But I think Michigan history tells a much more interesting story. You have to go back to the 1960s to find a time when a governor of Michigan was followed by another governor from the same party. And that's not because George Romney had lost his election. He actually was elevated. He got a chance to work for Richard Nixon at HUD, and his lieutenant governor took his place. So ever since then, we've been trading the governor's office back and forth, Democrats and Republicans. No one holds it for too long. And so Michigan history says we're the ones who are due. Now, you probably didn't think much of it when Gretchen Whitmer got elected governor, right? At the time? Because it sure ended up affecting us quite a bit, right? Did you ever imagine you were electing someone who would decide whether you could work and support your family? I didn't understand that to be a power of the governor's office. I still don't, right? I didn't think that we'd be electing someone who would decide who's essential and who's not essential. I didn't think that for all the talk about the damn roads, the roads would still look like what I just traveled on, right? And so the question I need you guys to ask your friends as you talk politics, because let's think about who's here right now, right? If you're here at noon, chances are you're the people within your friend group that when Mike Duggan ran for governor, hey, is this guy really an independent? What do I need to know about him? When Carla Wagner was pushing Axe My Tax, hey, do you think this thing could actually pass? Probably in 2016, a lot of you, hey, what do you think about this Donald Trump guy? Could he really do it? You guys are the ones who get those calls. You might not have a selfie stick on you, but you are influencers in your own way. And so I need you to ask your friends, are you better off than you were 8 years ago? And maybe you are. Maybe by the grace of God. Maybe you've had a child, a grandchild, got a promotion, right? The things that God can give you. But as far as the things state government can do for you, you're not better off. You didn't get any free stuff. The roads are not good. So whether it's the damn roads, the damn schools, or the damn data centers, our lives are a lot more government affected than they were just 8 years ago. And I think we saw in 24, right? Whoever is the most pissed off group is typically the one who does the best on election day. That's us. That's us. If you look at the left, they're on like year 10 of Trump derangement. I mean, they were doing pink hats in 2017. They were trying to do red hats earlier this year. They're out of colors. They're out of colors. They're out of ideas. Look at how seriously and how hard they're pushing against efforts to roll back non-citizen voting. Why would that be? Why would that be, right? That tells me they're on the final frontier. That tells me they have no more, and I hope it remains proverbial bullets left to fire. Non-citizen voting is it for them, and were that door to be slammed shut, what's their next move? So Democrats are kind of maxed out. I think about this woman I would see in Oakland County when I'd be giving a speech, this woman, Victoria King. Turns out her name should be Victoria No Kings. And so, you talk to her and, she's running for a probate judge position in Oakland County. You don't think much of it. And then I got a text from a friend saying, hey, if you see this woman out, make sure to not sign her stuff or let anyone else sign her stuff. She's a No Kings protester. She, pals around with UAW and big labor. Everything she does is Democrat-based. And yet here she was at meetings where I was speaking. Now, why was she there? To harvest our power. She'd sit there at a 3-hour meeting and maybe come home with 15 new signatures. Why was it worth it for her? Because if she wins, then she's not just some weirdo running for judge, she's an elected official. If she wins, she's now in the pipeline where when a future governor who's a Democrat needs to make an appointment to the Supreme Court or the Court of Appeals, now you're in that pipeline. Victoria King understands something. We don't have to like her tactics, but she understands something that every Republican needs to, which is that politics is for power. She showed up to harvest our power. And so that's what this real Republican learned from a fake Republican. And you look at what's happening in Congress, and you see people, think about how excited we were in 24. You elect Donald Trump. Not just do you reelect him and create the most unlikely comeback story probably in U.S. history. But you also give them the House. You also give them the Senate. You give them the popular vote. You give them as much power as you could want a president to have, and look at what Congress has done with it. They won't even pass the SAVE Act. That's like, it's not just 80-20 among Republicans. It's like 80-20 among people. The idea of closing the door to non-citizen voting, because every one of them who votes cancels out one of us who votes. I think about that illegal voter, Ho Ching Gao, the guy who voted in Ann Arbor in 24. His vote, and his vote counted, by the way, his vote canceled out one of yours. Now, I was in touch with the Secretary of State office. They assured me that my vote personally wasn't affected. But can you say the same? Do you know? I was kidding, but yeah, it might have been mine. It might have been mine that was canceled out. And that's the uncertainty that's been created. And so when you look at someone like Jocelyn Benson, right, who's running to be our governor, you want to tell your friends something that'll wake them out of their Fox News stupor? Tell them this. Tell them that the lady running for governor is overseeing the election while she's running for governor. Ask him about the name Katie Hobbs. I'm sure the name Katie Hobbs looms large in all of our minds, right? Like, you had a woman who had very little popularity, seemingly, and somehow she wins the 2022 election while she's counting the votes. Who could have ever imagined such a thing, right? And so, we can talk about Jocelyn Benson and the bloated voter rolls. We can talk about Benson and the Southern Poverty Law Center, but start with something that's digestible and understood to the average person to be not quite right, which is that the woman running the election is running in the election. This is perverse. This is perverse, and there'd be no better fit. There'd be no more of a fitting end to her career in Michigan politics than to make her count the votes in an election where she loses. And that's actually happened before. This guy Richard Austin in 1994, he'd been Secretary of State since like 1970. He won in that. But then, term limits come. But really the 1994 was John Engler. That was him going for a second term and brought a red wave with him. This was also the one that brought in the House Republicans. This was the Bill Clinton midterms. And these are the hazards of viewing it as a midterm, right? Because the other party did well. And this guy had to count his own votes. So we've seen it happen. And so don't let your friends think. I think anger is something that is a good motivating force. I don't think believing that everything was cheated and stolen from you is as helpful. So we have to get out of this loser mindset that says they're just going to steal it. There's nothing we can do about it. The bottom line, whether you look at Secretary of State, Governor's office, all of our problems, if you're going to change Michigan in 27, you have to win it to fix it. And that needs to be our mentality, is you have to win it to fix it. And so you're going to face cynicism from these friends who says, oh, well, the voting machines and all these things. I think there is a part of our psychology as Michigans where a lot of people identify more with the 22 election that we lost than the 24 election when we won. And so we need to challenge that thought process. We didn't just elect Donald Trump in 24, send him back to the White House. We also had the only state legislative body that flipped from blue to red when we won the Michigan House. And what that told me is that the Michigan voter was responding to specific conditions in Michigan. Democrats held all the gavels in Lansing, the House, the Senate, the governor's office for just 2 years. By the end of it, they weren't even getting along with each other, the Democrats. With just 2 years of them having power, we had enough taste of theirs in our mouth that we spit it out and we rejected them. And that's the mentality we have to bring into 26. Now we have a chance to come in and get the Michigan Senate. And so imagine it's January 27, Republican governor, Republican Secretary of State, a guy you guys all know, Anthony Forlini, heck of a guy, Republican Attorney General. Now imagine 2030, right? Let's imagine 3 statewide officials, and appearing opposite them in the U.S. Senate race is Alyssa Slotkin. That's not a very favorable circumstance, is it? We're a state that almost always reelects statewide incumbents. You have to go back to the year 2000 to find a statewide incumbent in Michigan who lost. Unfortunately, that was our guy. That was Spence Abraham running against Debbie Stabenow. And so we are 0 for 11 in the last 11 U.S. Senate races in Michigan. But you look at it right now, you got Mike Rogers, well-funded, strong candidate. He's knocked all the rust off from his time off, outside of politics, and he comes in with the head of steam. He's up against 3 Democrats who don't like each other and are not helping each other by continuing this race. They're pretty much going to fight up until the primary and then have 3 months to pivot to Mike Rogers. So if you look at Michigan as an extension of national politics, you have a lot of reason to be worried about November. But if we make politics local again, and talk about the specific conditions in Michigan, who crashed our state, and what we're going to do about it, that's a much different dynamic. And so I just want us to see the opportunity that we have. We have to take a positive mindset into this thing and say history is on our side. Conditions, as far as us being the aggrieved party, is on our side. But it's going to take some discipline. When we hear our friends talk about the midterm election, we're going to correct them. It might be a midterm in 49 other states. But in Michigan, this is our final exam. This is it. This is it. And it might not be this in Minnesota. It might not be this in California. But in Michigan, either we save Michigan or Michigan won't be saved. Nor will it be salvageable. Because what the Democrats are going to do is they're going to run off all the decent people like us, people who have other options and other things to do, and they're going to rule over the ash heap. And then once we leave, there won't be enough good people to stop them, to fight them. And then we're lost. And then we're no longer a swing state. We're no longer something that attracts the eyes of the world. At that point, we would just be a lost cause. A little bit about me. So, as Sheila mentioned, my name is James David Dixon. I have the James Dixon podcast. I'd like to, if we could start with you. You don't have to sign it, but I have a sign-up sheet for the podcast. Basically, if you'd like to sign it, if you'd like to get on the list, I talk about these things. I spent a lot of time and a lot of energy earlier this year. You know who I spent most of my time talking about so far? Mike Duggan. Mike Duggan. The scenario that always worried me about the 26 election was this, right? Where Jocelyn Benson is an obviously poor candidate, bad at her day job, and just attackable from a million directions. So Democrats say, okay, she's bad. We're not going to go with her. I mean, her campaign literature is pink and purple. Her slogan might as well be, I'm with her. Nothing but the most extreme of feminists, girl bosses, and the weakest men would support Benson. And so what I feared is Jocelyn Benson bottoming out early, like she has, and then people saying, well, wait a minute, we got another choice. We can go with Mike Duggan. Yeah. And in that event, if those Democrat defectors were then joined by what I call Tigers game Republicans, you know the guy. He parks 2 blocks from the stadium. That 2-block walk is nice. Ballpark is nice. You get a drink with your wife afterward, and you come out thinking, Detroit must be back, and Mike Duggan must have brought it back. I mean, hell, on the way in, I passed a billboard that said Mike Duggan's the most effective mayor in America. Must be true, right? I saw it. It exists. And so that's what worried me. Every room I went into, there was a few Duggan-curious people there. And so I viewed it as my job to kill off the Duggan-curious among the Republicans, and apparently it worked. I mean, so the guy realized he couldn't make the math work. He couldn't make the numbers work. How you doing? Real good. And so that was what worried me. So you're going to hear some Republicans who are like, "Oh man, the math worked out better when Duggan was in the race because it's a three-way dance and two Democrats are going to split the vote." That's not how I see it. The way I see it is that without Mike Duggan in the race, who gives some dint of being a centrist, right? I don't think his record bears that out, and I was explaining it before I was robbed of the opportunity. I didn't think the guy was going to drop out by Memorial Day. See, I overestimated Duggan. I thought he had the heart. Turns out he didn't. Turns out Duggan was not very dug in. I'm copywriting that, so don't, a little bit. But Dirty Dirt Duggan. Dirty Dirt Duggan, yeah. And so with Duggan gone, where is the Tigers game Republican to go? They're going to come back home. Are they really going to go for another girl boss? No. I doubt it. I doubt it because there's big differences between Whitmer in 2018, who by that point had been a lawmaker, had a lot of friends in Lansing, even in the Republican Party. I mean, her first term as governor, she signed 1,000 laws with the Republicans. So the idea that she'd be able to work with everybody actually did bear itself out, right or wrong. I think it was wrong. Jocelyn Benson doesn't have those relationships. She's not a moderate and not viewed as a moderate. And so without a Democrat there, without a second option, without someone who gives the appearance of moderation, I think we're in good position. It's also true in the U.S. Senate race. I think, Senate candidates obviously run solitary, but spiritually, I think Alyssa Slotkin is Mike Rogers' running mate right now. Because Alyssa Slotkin presented herself as a moderate that whole election. I remember I was at the car shop one time and I swear I only saw it once, but I saw a commercial where Slotkin was saying she was going to put on a sheriff's badge herself and deport people at the southern border. She said she was going to do it. And so that's obviously not how it went, right? She becomes a U.S. Senator, then she immediately starts committing sedition. Point being, and it's the same point I would say about Duggan. Remember those commercials that used to say there is no safe cigarette? There is no sane Democrat. The Democrats are unsafe at any speed. And so I think regardless of who the candidate would be, Mike Rogers is well suited against them. And I think regardless of who the governor candidate would be, I'm sure everyone has thoughts on who it should be, but I hope we're all grown enough to rally around whoever it ends up being. We've seen some cracks in the blue team these last few years. Remember after Biden, you heard so much about blue no matter who? And then they elected John Fetterman as a U.S. Senator, guy whose brain didn't even work. And it really seemed like Democrats would elect just anybody. Okay, but if that were still true, why did they feel the need to replace Biden in 24? If the theory was Democrats would elect whoever you put in front of them, why did they feel the need to replace Biden? Because it's not true. Why did they just put forth the least electable slate ever? So I live in Oakland County. The attorney general candidate I did not want to see was Karen McDonald. You're telling me you got the county prosecutor of Michigan's second largest county who has profile after the Oxford shooting case, and you bypass that for some communist from Washtenaw County? It's stupid. They've made so many bad choices this year. So when you look at the history that says Republicans are due, when you look at the Senate race where you got 3 Democrats fighting to be tallest midget right now, and all of them are going to walk into the meat grinder in the general election. when you look at a governor's race where the only opponent is a girl boss who is unlikely to draw crossover voters, everything says conditions are ripe for success. The only question I have is, what's your role going to be? You know, if you're looking for a chance to knock on some doors, I'm with Americans for Prosperity Michigan. I'm connected with them. We have paid door knocking opportunities. You could be making $21 an hour to meet your neighbors and help save this state. So there's things to do, but I would ask you to look within, whether it is stroking a check, whether it is knocking a door, making a phone call, talking to your friends who maybe have the beliefs but don't always put the action behind it. All of us have some role to play in a Michigan we can live with. And with that, I thank you all for coming out, and if anyone has questions, let's have a conversation.
Well, hey there, can you hear me?
There we go.
So, taxation. It seems that that's been a talking point with Carla Wagner. Now it seems to have been gone out by the wayside. Kind of too bad, but did appreciate her concern and highlighting taxation, particularly those that are, even the young people, to those that are more in their senior age. Mm-hmm. This candidate seemed to dodge my question as to, you know, will he be able to curb the addiction in Lansing? As you're probably aware, Matt Hall did a kind of a presentation in Mackinac that we're going to save you $900 a year. And then out of legislature, there was one, I can't quote the bill right now, $1,000 or $2,000. That's a slap in the face to many of us that are paying in the thousands, maybe at the local and state level. Do you have any perspective on that?
Yeah, you know, they're trying to push some kind of tax, you know, property tax reform package in the Michigan House. Hall, you know, this is still right in the middle of the budget process, so he's trying to use that as a bargaining chip. Like, hey, if you guys want some things you want, make sure to, you know, eliminate the base property tax in Michigan. The problem is we have so many millages in Michigan that even if the base rate were to go down to zero, we'd still be paying a lot of property taxes because every time there's a police millage and a fire millage. And so I'm not opposed to millages like at every time and every place, but what I will say is this. If ever you see a millage on the May ballot or the August ballot, you should always show up and vote no. Most people who vote in November. And so if someone's trying to put something on the May and August ballot, they're trying to miss you. They want the appearance of democracy with the results of a very few, a chosen few, a specifically targeted few. So think about it, if I'm president of the school board and I'm pursuing a millage, I'd be fine if just me and my staff showed up to vote. Because if too many of you guys show up to vote with your questions and your ability to vote no, that might mess up my steez, right? And so I can't have that. So I only want the right people voting. And so, you know, there's an effort, Matt Maddock, one of my favorite reps, he pushed a bill to say all the millages have to happen in November. Unlikely to happen with Democrats controlling the Michigan Senate and the governor's office. And so you have to appreciate kind of what you're capable of doing, right? And so the Michigan House is passing a lot of things to put the example out there that were we to have more power, if we had a favorable governor, if we had a favorable Senate, here's what we do. And so I think the law would be nice, but I think what would be more powerful is the social custom. And like, it's like abortion. Okay, you can have unlimited abortion, but how do you then make it unthinkable, regardless of how legal it is? Because if people don't want to do it, they won't do it. So we have to change our own wants and needs. And if we do that, we can change the political calendar in Michigan. And so that's what I'm trying to get is people involved, not just on an every cycle basis, but year round. You know, do you know whether there's going to be something on your August ballot where you live? You should, because if you don't know, it'll cost you money. Think about our friends in Roseville. 4,000 people in a community of 47,000, 4,000 people voted on a $175 million millage. It only won by 200 votes. So 21 people all called 10 friends and said, look what they're trying to pull on us, 210 votes, it would have failed. A few calls could have saved the community $175 million. The failure of those calls to happen is costly.
Okay, so with us having open primaries, I was thinking how actually with Chris Swanson, Sheriff Swanson, primary and Jocelyn Benson, in some ways that's going to help the Republican Party because the Democrats are going to have to vote Democrat if they really want her to beat Chris Swanson. Or, I mean, I guess, because in other races without a primary, they can go and vote all Republican and vote whoever they want in the Republican. So I saw that the Ann Arbor IBEW was endorsing Sheriff Chris Swanson. So he's getting a little bit of headway with some of the unions. So I'm sure all those people are going to go out and vote in the primary, hopefully, and vote Democrat instead of trying to kill our race, which they do on a regular basis with this open primary nonsense we have. So what do you think? Do you think, I don't know a whole lot about him, and I've kind of looked him up just to see if he has any kind of chance in beating her, you know, because wouldn't that be something if, you know, she got beat in the primary? So, I mean, what do you know about all of that kind of stuff? I mean, I know we got to run our election, but I'm just trying to see what, because everybody just keeps talking about her. And I'm like, well, there's somebody running against her in the primary.
Yeah, there is and there isn't. I mean, he's not going to win. And I haven't found these chaos operations to work on a statewide basis. It can win in a congressional district or something. It happened a few years ago on the west side of the state when they got John Gibbs in that Peter Meyer race. But I haven't found it to work statewide, A. And B, this year, everyone has a reason to vote for their own party, right? So Republicans, we're choosing our governor candidate. So we have multiple choices. That's reason for us to vote in our primary. Democrats are choosing a U.S. Senate candidate. That's reason for them to vote in that primary. So I think there's just a natural incentive for everyone to vote for the candidates they actually want and not try to do a chaos operation, which is unlikely to work statewide. It's just tough to scale something like that up. People aren't that smart, honestly. And so it's just tough to get people to vote at all, let alone vote for what I think is worst for that.
Yeah, but they have done.
They've tried it. But I can't think of a statewide candidate we've ever been stuck with because Democrats showed up to our primary, you know?
I can't, but I won't.
Who?
No, it's all right.
Who? Who?
I'm not telling.
It's a secret. All right.
We got stuck with a really, in my opinion, we got stuck with a really rotten candidate 4 years ago because of that. So. My personal opinion.
I think she's thinking about Tudor Dixon, right? Yeah. You know, but the thing about 22, no, there was no candidate who was going to win. And that's just something we have to understand. You have to go back to 1962 to find a time in Michigan when a governor running for a second term lost in that bid for a second term. That was John Swainson going up against the guy we talked about earlier, George Romney. You have to go back to 1990 to find a time when a governor, period, lost their bid for re-election, and that was Jim Blanchard running for a third term. Okay, then you also had Richard Austin lose in 94, the Secretary of State, and then you had Spence Abraham, the U.S. Senate candidate in 2000. So that's like 4 examples in 60 plus years of statewide candidates losing. So the idea that James Craig would have made that much of a difference, or Kevin Rinke or Perry Johnson, John Engler would have lost in 22. And so, but that's actually good news, because if you were never going to win 22, then that means it didn't have to be stolen, wasn't stolen, it was closer to inevitable. So because 22 wasn't a legitimate opportunity, that's what makes this a legitimate op. We've never had 4 statewide seats all open at once, no incumbent. So if we can get our mind right toward what happened, then we can see the opportunity we have to make something happen. Yes, ma'am, I see you there. I see you with the microphone, young lady.
We keep getting past it, so we're just holding it.
I have a question.
You have one of those faces. It just looked like you would have a question, right?
I do have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
I do have a question. So, we have a lot of people that are moderate voters. We have a lot of people that sit back and say, well, my vote doesn't count. So what do you say to those people now? Because, I mean, I can continually see, like, the moderate people, the people that are, like, middle of the road, which I think are a lot more people than we think, than there are conservatives and Democrats. I think we have a lot of middle of the road people. We saw that with the President Trump's election. A lot of independent voters came out and voted for him. Because of Maha. But my question is, how do we get those people off the fence? How do we get people that say, one, that their vote doesn't count, because we had issues in 2020. And then secondly is your moderate voters, how do you get them to lean, because we don't have Maha on the ballot, how do you get them to lean a little bit more conservatively? Do you bring up data centers? Do you bring up, or do you just listen to them and let them talk and not really say anything?
I think it's both. I think what the people you're describing, I think what they're really moderate about is they have a moderate habit of voting. It's not that they're holding out for moderate candidates. They just don't want to show up and vote in a lot of cases. And I think the reason I'm going on tour across Michigan to talk about these things is the same reason these people need to vote, which is that politics is too important to leave to politicians. And ultimately, our state, our communities, our country is going to reflect someone's values. So sitting out, it's like I heard a strength coach tell his football team, they were kind of loafing through the exercise. You ain't cheating me. You're cheating you. And so what a lot of people don't want to do is invest the time it takes to build the reality or the world they want. And so do you really want those things if you never put investment behind it? The Bible says that faith without works is dead. And so we got Democrats like Victoria King going for hours and hours, listening to guys like me talk. She's putting herself at risk of being swayed by me, all to gain a few votes at a time, a few signatures, not even votes yet. And I got to drag you to stop property taxes from being raised on your own house? And I also think movement-wide, we need to move past the over-focus on Trump. I think Donald Trump is clearly an exceptional man. I also think he'll never appear on another ballot again. And so I met so many people in 24 who said, I'd crawl over broken glass to vote for Trump. I've never heard anyone say that about their kids. Ever. I've never heard anyone say that about keeping the property taxes low on their house. So we need to stop trying to find someone who is so perfect that I support them in every way and support ourselves. Vote for you. Vote for you. Yeah. Thank you.
What's your thoughts on these data centers?
I don't like them. People say we need data centers. I'm not really big on we. You know what I mean? It's like saying we need illegal immigrants. No, there's some people whose business models rely on it, but I don't really care about those people. Those people, if they want to do business, first of all, I'm not giving you anything to do it. You need to be more like asking me if I'm going to let you do it. I don't like the form or the function of how they operate. Do we need more AI videos? Do we need, what is the thing we just can't do without? And also, Michigan, already has some data centers, right? But I don't think the logic quite tracks that Michigan will be left out of the future if we don't physically have data centers in Michigan. As I understand it, we can access data from anywhere, right? It has to be stored somewhere, but not necessarily here, and not in my backyard. And if you're going to do it, why not go to Detroit and Flint and places where people have left and big businesses have left, factories have left? Why not convert those? You know, it's like, and then you're talking about like all this green energy stuff, the solar panels and windmills. If those are our future, how come there's not one data center that runs on solar and wind? Why aren't they filling the building with solar panels, right? If this is just, it has to be part of the future, right? So it's all a lie. It's all ridiculous. If you want them, pay for it, manage to build it in a way that doesn't cost me and doesn't bring up my bills. We just need to be more selfish. And I think that was the appeal of Donald Trump, is that we've seen Donald Trump drive so many hard bargains for so many years. What we all wanted was the Trump dividend, right? Is like, maybe you wouldn't want to negotiate against Trump, but you knew he would get the best deal possible for himself. And so if you were in the same interest with him, you would get a better deal. We need to apply that mentality going forward. It's not just Trump. We have to find the Trump within ourselves that says, what's in it for me?
I think I'm on. I think someone who really helped us at one time was Hillary Clinton when she called us all deplorables.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, you know, and so Jocelyn Benson is going to say things just like that. You know, she's putting up Pride Month posts. I mean, just leaning into all the stupid things you would want a Democrat to do. And she's also very close with Hillary Clinton. My friend Anna Hoffman calls her Jocelyn Rodham Benson. I think that's a good one. I think that one would work on the road as well. So these people are not what you think. Nobody's, you know, Mike Duggan was supposed to have reinvented politics, right? Guy didn't last till Memorial Day. You know, Larry Bird once said, the best respect is none at all. And that's what we need to show.
And one other thing, what did Gretchen Whitmer walk away with when she went to see Davos with all her buddies? Yeah, did she come with a full purse?
What she spent is $6 million of our money. Right. Then next thing you know, she has a speaking role at Davos with the World Economic Forum. And next thing you know, we got a Center for Urban Transformation and a Center for Advanced Manufacturing. It's in Troy. Now, what could a Swiss nonprofit that writes nothing but white papers teach Detroit about advanced manufacturing? What they can teach Detroit is how to fire as many workers as possible and replace them with robots. What they can teach us is to denigrate the way men have made a living in this state for a century by calling those jobs dirty and dangerous. And so that's what they've given us. And so these are the kind of things we talk about. We just talk about who ran Michigan, who ran it into the ground, and why. If we talk about Michigan, we win. If we're talking about Iran and Venezuela and Minnesota, things are going to go sideways.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Could Michigan go to something like an electoral college system for votes? Because it seems to me that all the big cities, especially in southeastern Michigan, vote Democrat. But if you look at the map of Michigan, it's all red. There's just few blue spots here and here, but those are the people that make the decisions.
I think this is another great example of you have to win it to fix it. And so the reason we lose elections to those people is the reason you couldn't force a constitutional amendment like that down their throat. And so we have to amass our own power. Lance Griffin, you know, I'm sure you guys know Lance, 10X votes. You know, reach out to 10 of your friends, get them to vote, that kind of thing. Lance believes there's 1.7 million Republicans in Michigan who don't vote regularly. Yep. And that if 30,000 people reached out to 10 of their friends, we could turn Michigan red in a substantial way. So I think a lot of times people get attracted to these big ideas, but there's a lot of blocking and tackling that has to happen. And so any idea that they present as a constitutional amendment, okay, where's the $30 million? Because that's what it's going to take to pass it. So,
and why is that? Why does it take $30 million?
Because you have to first get the signatures for it. Yeah. Then you have to manufacture the consent to get it across the goal line.
But if enough people are for doing this thing, it shouldn't be that hard. It shouldn't cost $30 million.
But it does.
Yeah, on purpose, though.
I mean, Proposal 3, the baby killing amendment, that was a $30 million campaign, and then the against side spent a lot less money. So it matters who's asking the question also. The only thing in Michigan politics that happens automatically, in November, they're going to ask us if we want to do a constitutional convention.
Yeah,
That happens every 16 years. And it typically fails because it doesn't matter if the idea is good or bad. That idea needs a champion. It needs human beings to rally the cause, and there's just not any. So, if you want to change the Constitution, that's going to be an uphill battle.
Yeah, well, I think it's something we should think about, because this is ridiculous. If I lived up north, my vote doesn't count. It doesn't count, because I'm going to be outvoted by the people all in the blue states, the blue areas.
You just need more votes
Just-
than them.
Something needs to be done. That's what I'm saying. Something needs to be done. You have an idea for that? Good.
Yesterday, I was talking to a candidate, a Republican candidate, who was. Yesterday, I was talking to a Republican candidate who was running in Detroit, okay, which is solid blue. And he said he got 0, 0, 0 support from the Republican Party. He was all out on his own in deep blue Detroit. So, I've been noticing this through the year. I understand that we're going to put our money into a place where we will win. But how about taking on the attitude, we can win in those places too? We got to do something about that. We can't just say, well, that's the way it is. Who cares?
Well, that's what we've been doing now for many, many years.
Well, it's not getting you anywhere.
Dollars are scarce, though, and time is scarce. Right, and that's the reason he didn't get support, is because it wasn't viewed as a winnable race.
Well, with an attitude like that, we never will win.
No, I mean,
Okay.
there's just a reality of so for instance,
Like that. You go and check and ask everybody in Detroit who will vote for it.
I know what you're saying.
You'll get 95%.
All right, we're done.
yeah, it's just so.
Decade after decade.
So let's think about it like this. Let's think practically, right? Another reason I don't like the midterm. So we have 14 Washington jobs up for grabs, right? The U.S. Senate and then the entire 13-member U.S. House delegation. We have 151 Lansing jobs up for grabs. So when I say it's not a midterm, it's literally not. This is a Lansing-focused election, not a Washington one. Of those 13 U.S. House seats, there's maybe 2 that are going to be viewed as nationally competitive, which means that it's not going to attract the money. These guys are focusing on 10 races. There are not 435 competitive races nationwide, and a Republican who's going to get support in a place like Detroit, exceptions can be made for the exceptional, but you have to prove it, and you have to have people who believe that you can do it. And that's the real problem I'm pretty sure I know who you're talking about. That's the problem that person's facing. Until you show some results, why would they invest?
All right.
All right,
Any
thank
questions?
you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.